All right. Welcome everyone. We're gonna be starting the interview now. I guess just for some prior context, this is actually part of a school project that I am doing about the entire history of Tetris the Grandmaster. And for this, I've decided to interview some folks in the TGM community. So last time I interviewed Color Thief, a legendary veteran who's been around and has been a part of the TGM community since the early days, all the way back in the early 2000s. Today, we will be interviewing another TGM legend. He's been around for a while in the general Tetris community as well, Kitaru. Alright, I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. My handle is Kitaru, and my name is Alex Kerr, and I've been I guess kind of bopping around the Tetris community for a good number of years now. I think I joined Tetris Concept in around 2006, um, like late 2006 or early 2007, and I kind of got into the community through I guess at the time I found Tetris Concept because I was looking for information about Tetris DS and multiplayer strategies. But also at the time, it rekindled my interest in something I hadn't really played for a good number of years, which was Tetris the Grandmaster. I got interested in Tetris Grandmaster the way a lot of, I think, other players of the time did, which was through some of the viral videos. I saw Arika's Tetris the Grandmaster 2 Death Mode demonstration video, and when I first saw that video, I think it was around early 2000s, like 2001, 2002 or so. And so I did get an opportunity to try the game around that time, but I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So when you fast forward a few years, 2006, when I start playing Tetris DS with friends and so on at school, start to learn more about the game. What is a T-spin? Why does this message pop up when it doesn't look like I'm doing a T-spin? And then learning what all of those mechanics were like through the Tetris Concept forum and wiki. Then I also found more like-minded TGM players and decided to pick.
Alright, I guess you kind of covered how you got into TGM. What was the scene kind of like when you joined? I'm assuming that was 2008, 2007?
Yeah, so yeah, it was. I remember joining sometime around like maybe like December 2006 or like maybe like early 2007. I don't remember exactly when I stopped lurking the forum and actually joined and started posting. But the scene, I guess, I would say it felt fairly established by that point in time in terms of like there were regular TGM players. There was good players in terms of TGM, but also Tetris. Yes, people were kind of playing a bit of everything, right? So I remember veteran members such as Color Thief, Jago, Amnesia, Roasty. I think Edo definitely, MFM. I remember a lot of these names were on the forums at the time. Teppels in terms of developing Lockjaw and so on. And so and Matt, definitely Matt. Yeah, like there was a lot of, I guess, mentors to look up to, digital as well. Like there's a lot of established players that were researching both TGM and I guess the guideline versus side of things. We had Caffeine from the, I guess, you know, uh, what would you call that? I guess like the Tetranet kind of side of the scene as well. Yeah, Tetranet like versus guideline, all of that sort of thing. So yeah, there was a lot of different players. I would say the scene was fairly varied. There's a lot of established, experienced players in terms of TGM. Like the French scene was there, um, and I think a lot of good accomplishments have had taken place. And so when I first started, I guess coming back to the game, I felt like I had a lot of ground to make up. Or like I didn't feel like I would I guess be at the point where I was today, because there was already a lot of maybe like master like like tap master players or like really strong time attack. Um, yeah, so I guess it was the scene was small but strong. I guess if that makes sense. That was my perception of it.
Alright. I guess kind of next up, when did you get TGM1 GM?
So I think that it took me. This is off the top of my head. I think I have this actually written, so I can probably forward it to you later, like the kind of the timeline, or I might have mentioned it in. There was a sort of an interview on Tetris.com with some various different high level players in different scenes, and I might have mentioned it in there as well. But I think I did get it in 2007. Like I think, I first played the game back in 2002 on a machine that can like kind of barely have handled it at the time, and came back to it 2007, and I think by around the halfway point of that year, like maybe May or June, I think I had gotten GM. But it's a little bit tough to recall right now.
And did you play this on a PCB or did you emulate it?
So like many other players, how they got their start, I did have to start with emulator, and was not yet in a position to start picking up arcade hardware, but was very interested in doing so. I think I had an interest in trying to make some sort of super gun for a variety of different arcade games that kind of caught my interest when I was back in high school, and when I when I went to college and started saving up some of my money for things, I did start kind of I guess narrowing down toward that. I wanted to get TGM as a first game. At the time, it was a good entry level game because it was like a $100 game, so give or take, which for arcade games, isn't too bad. And just it was a matter of doing that and then getting additional hardware to get it up and running. But I was like, okay, yeah, that seems like an entry level. So then I think sometime in 2008 is when I picked up my first PCB.
And which PCB was that? By any chance?
It was TGM one.
Oh, all right.
And then I started saving up toward maybe getting TGM 2 in the future.
All right. So I guess sorry. Speaking of TGM 2, in 2008, I believe you got your first Death GM. Is that correct?
I think the order is the other way. Definitely the other way, but I'm just trying to remember the timeline. I got my Master GM a fair bit before I got my Death GM. I'm kind of trying to remember the exact timeline of Death GM, Death PBs, because I had one that was close. I think for a while I had like a level 949 in Death, but couldn't quite close it out. But since I'd been doing a lot of practice on primarily Death and Invisible and Secret Grade, when I came back to doing Master Time Attack, I got it relatively quickly. I think the third time I triggered the Emerald, I got Tap Master GM.
All right. And so, how did you prepare for the other ones then? Like, how did you prepare for Death and learning Invisible?
So, to learn Invisible, I was using fan games and also debug or debug cheat type of trainer for Tap itself. And yeah, it's just a matter of just playing it because that was what I found fun or interesting, and so I just kind of threw myself headfirst into it. I really liked some of the different challenges. Like Secret Grade was also another big thing that I played a lot of. I'm not sure what exactly drew me to like pushing so hard on those, like, I guess kind of like secondary challenges before I actually worked on getting my time up in Master, but once I could kind of clear consistently, then I kind of came back around and put it all together.
All right, so I know you did mention fan games earlier. I actually do want to touch on that a little bit. What are your thoughts on them? I guess at the moment, or like I guess back then as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess let me try to like break this into chunks or phases. My thoughts on fan games in general is that I mean, there's a couple of angles you can examine this, right? If you look at it just in terms of U.S. copyright law or something of that sort, you can't really copyright a game or its rules. That's not the thing that stands on its own as a copyrightable work. What is copyrightable is source code. So if you look at a game that is, theoretically simple enough to express in a different independent programmer's own source code, then they're, at least from the copyright perspective, free to do so. It's the same way, I think the examples in the old Copyright Office articles about this are as is it the Copyright Office? Well, anyway, I would seem just there's an example that seems to stick out in my memory, which is if you have the game like Chutes and Ladders or something of that sort, the copyrightable work associated with that is the text of the instructions, also the art on the game board. But if somebody wants to make a game that functions the same as Chutes and Ladders, snakes and escalators or whatever, or even just not even remotely associated with the same theme, then they can do that. They can write the rules in their own way. You can't copyright the game itself. You can patent mechanics. You can protect like elements of design or art. You can design the way that it's packaged or the trademark associated with it. So for the longest time, the perception, as far as like open source developers were concerned, was the thing that Tetris has is they have the trademark. The name Tetris is recognizable, and they might have some other things surrounding that. They have a sound mark, for example, on the iconic, quote unquote Tetris theme, Korobe Nikki, as it is used in association with a puzzle video game. That's something that they, as part of their distinctive branding. But if you asked me back then, I would say, well, there's nothing wrong with somebody making a fan game. If they can make something that is analogous to, or trains similar skills, but is a different game than Tetris the Grandmaster, I would say that that's allowable. And I would say that it doesn't distract from Arika's ability to make their own unique games. If they want to make a sequel to TGM4, there are new things that they can bring to the table and have shown that they would be able to bring to the table in that domain. So I, back then certainly would have said, yeah, I don't think there's a problem with doing that. And I think it demonstrates the existence of a market that would be interested in playing the game. The fact that we have to have our own, I guess, substitutions for it, or, different ways to train that game, doesn't take away from the fact that there is a well-polished and well-presented version of the game that people would go out and buy if it was available in their region, or if they would go to an arcade if it was somewhere where they could go play it. And my attitude hasn't really changed too much on that front. I guess the dynamics of the clone prohibition on the forum was just that we do recognize that if it is presenting a difficulty in terms of business discussions and so on, if requested informally to stop talking about it in public, it's not so hard to do. So we tried it out. It kind of evaporated all activity on the forum because so many people would like to play on the original hardware. They would like to have access to it. It just wasn't in arcades at the time. It wasn't something that was accessible in terms of being able to buy. Even at the time, asking someone to spend 100 and then maybe 100 more on, TGM1 and then the hardware to set it up and the knowledge to hook it all up. It's not like a home console where you just buy a home console and you buy a CD or a cartridge and pop it in. So, we tried it. We want to, whatever we can do as, I guess, fans to not interfere with whatever the business discussion side of things, if there really is this pushback from publishers or TTC as the licensor that says, hey, because people can, quote unquote, go out and play your game for free, that means that there's not a need for us to let you make a new one, which I think is a, kind of a false dichotomy. But if that was really what was happening, then we were fine to try to stand down. I know there's a lot of debate about this, but I was, I guess, supportive of the attempt at least.
Right, and so I know you were the one to break the ice as well, because I think around that same time you sent an email to Hank Rogers, and I guess it kind of spiraled from there. Can you kind of just talk about that and how it kind of ended the clone prohibition, I believe?
Yeah, so I guess with the information we had at the time, we kind of started with just having, I guess, Mihara's perspective on why the game wouldn't be able to be released, why TGM4 would not be published by Sega at the time. And he blamed clones and emulation for difficulties in conversations. And we also had information from the past that indicated that Textmaster, back when it was supposed to be a commercial work, it was supposed to be sold at probably some sort of, independent publishing event like Comic Het or something similar. They were planning on making this fan game of, TGM style, Tetramino game, and they were going to sell it. And that was a problem, supposedly. This is based on, lore and hearsay and like what information was made available through whatever means. It was believed that the Tetris company told Arika that they had to manage that they had to, keep people from making, what they would call infringing works, or works that were copying or cloning. And I guess what ended up happening in that scenario was that the developers, the circle that was going to be working on Textmaster, removed the mention of it being a commercial work from their website, but maybe we're still planning on distributing it around that time as a free work. And supposedly, TTC penalized Arika for that, or, called off some sort of business discussion or something of that sort. I think there's a lot of, stories that are, hard to tell what the exact scenario is, because we don't have much information other than, maybe the way it's presented by different actors in the scenario, right? Like we have some, like Mihara's perspective, we have Hank's perspective, we might have, in the case of like something like Textmaster, we might have, the Dojin circle, then we might have their perspective and what action they took. But it's really hard to piece that stuff together and really have like a complete answer to what occurred. But at least in the TGM4 discussion, the claim was Mihara said, because of clone and emulation, we weren't able to release this game. So we tried the prohibition. Then we talked to Hank, and Hank said, well, he didn't know that it was canceled. It wasn't something from their end where TTC said, because there's clones and emulation, you won't be able to put out this game, at least as far as he as CEO knew. And then he got back to me and just said, it was a 1 or 2 line email. He just said, the reason why the game's not coming out is because Sega decided not to publish. He didn't provide any additional detail on that. But as far as we knew, or we were concerned from the fan community, was like, it's not a problem with the license. It's not a problem with TTC saying that they won't let them make this game because it's clone and emulation, at least not this time. So we decided, at least with what view we had of the world, we shouldn't hinder ourselves with something that isn't a problem as far as the license goes. I guess you could look back on that and still say, maybe plausibly Sega was thinking that because it was a clonable game that they wouldn't take the risk on it. But I think the other aspect that you can kind of connect the dots on too is that Sega had their own game that they were going to be putting out using the Tetris license around that time. They had Decorus, or also called internationally Giant Tetris. And if you look at the performance of Decorus at the time compared to TGM4 at location tests and amusement shows and so on, there's a particular amusement show where it ran for a weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Decorus is always at the top. It's always in the top 3 of interest in terms of how many people are playing the game at the amusement show. And TGM4 broke into the top 10 on the last day. And so if you look at stats like that, it could be something's in parallel. It could be Sega deciding, we're not going to take the risk on it because it's clonable, but, they're also making a Tetris game. That could be as easily cloned as TGM4. But there was also the additional aspect of maybe they just thought it was too niche, too hardcore. Whereas, if there was to be any sort of sales or, coin drop lost because people could clone it, at least they have a popular earning game, something that could be enjoyed casually, and that they didn't think that would cut into their bottom line as much. So it's kind of hard to weigh which is more important, but you can start to paint a picture of like, well, this could be important, this could be important. It's not one answer of just, oh, it's because of clones and emulation. There's other factors in play there.
Right. And so I guess we are kind of steering towards TGM4. I did want to ask, what were your thoughts about the 2009 prototype or the 2009 test?
Well, so we didn't really have a lot of information about it. All we really knew from the 2009 test was that I guess whatever footage we saw of Konoha mode and whatever people at the test talked about, like at the time, Master mode was still playable, um, and it was compared more to TGM2 than TGM3 in terms of speed and so on. Um, I think it still had the worlds mode where if you played with world rotation, then it had a separate like marathon like scoring mode and so on. Um, but I mean, we didn't really get any hands-on experience with it, so it's kind of hard to say. Like we just know that whatever people said, whatever they saw, there's descriptions of it from text descriptions of it from the time, and we know what some of that I guess was preserved on into the 2015 test. Um, but I don't really have a lot of thoughts other than just I was excited that there was something coming out, and I would want to be able to play it or see what it was like once it came out, and then it didn't.
All right, so jumping ahead just a little bit, I do want to talk about I guess what I would say is a monumental event in I guess TGM history, Kevin getting World GM.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on that? And I guess like what was your
Mm-hmm.
I guess like relationship and experience with talking to Kevin DDR as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember when he got World GM.
It was September of 2011.
Yeah, I think my recollection is just that he got it, but it was a lot quieter than his effort on Classic, I guess. So I think the thing that sticks out more in my mind is like, for example, when he got the Classic GM exam and failed it, and then took time off of the game. Um, so I think just in terms of how the mode was perceived, like playing World instead of Classic, a lot of people, I guess, didn't take it as seriously. It was like, which is in a way kind of unfortunate. Like I think there was a lot of negativity toward World because of negativity toward the guideline and the fact that it had to be included, and the fact that guideline games were causing TGM games to, in theory, not be marketable or not, get the license over the years. So, I don't have a lot of recollection or memory of the World GM. I mean, I think it's a achievement, but I also just don't remember them talking about it that much after they got it. Um, I think it fell by the wayside of trying to like be serious and play the real mode and work on Classic, because I think they also got a lot of I don't know if derision is the right word. I guess like a lot of like poking fun at the way that they played World, because of it lets you do some more lenient things, and their early World attempts had some kind of funny moments in them, like they had, I guess, a lot of rotation or hold abuse. That's where kind of the term like Kev hold comes from, is like stalling using hold. And also like some instances where like a T piece would spin all the way around and then lock. So people are like, like you shouldn't be stalling that aggressively in TGM3. But I think on the flip side, if you come from Tetris DS and you come into TGM3 rather than, starting from TGM1 and working your way up, it lets you do these things. I mean, even in Classic, there's some ways where you can stall the game. I mean, a lesser known variant of the term Kev hold is the Na hold, because Nahuel, when he started playing Shirase, also had that kind of like stutter step, hold abuse to kind of extend thinking time. So I guess circling back though, my thought about World GM is just that I think that he probably felt like it wasn't the serious achievement just because of how his experience playing it was at the time and the like desire to play like the real TGM as it was. So I can't remember a whole lot about that time off the top of my head.
All right, so then I guess let's talk about his classic GM achievement as well. So what were
Hmm.
your thoughts on that? Because I know that might be a little bit more memorable as well.
Yeah, definitely. I remember the run up to it. I think the interesting thing about that period of time was that it was quite far removed from his previous run toward GM because he used to upload a lot of YouTube videos, so you got to see things like his previous Master M exam pass, and the GM exam fail, and then there was a big span of time where he didn't play the game, and I think even sold the kit that he had at the time. And then when we did the demos at Awesome Games Done Quick and Summer Games Done Quick, then there was the big push to I guess kind of return to the game, and I think that was like a good example of I guess the Twitch live streaming era. He definitely used to stream back then, like Ustream and stuff before, I guess, like Twitch live streaming era, like kind of pioneered that side of things. Um, but I think that's like one of the big first examples of like a huge, not I guess like the only one, but like it was a pretty monumental achievement being streamed, live every section of attempts on Twitch. It was also spaced out quite a bit, like because I think I had a kind of a similar experience to that. I guess we both had a period of time where we were pushing for it, and then we kind of took time off of the game and then came back for it again because I also used to stream it on Twitch around the same period that he was going for his exam. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was a big success of that moment. The fact that the game was big and interesting, popular. There's a lot of energy around it, and I guess that kind of helped him come back to it and get it. And I definitely was in the Twitch chat watching when it happened, and yeah, it was just an exciting time.
All right, so you did mention HDQ and SGDQ 2015. I just want to ask, like, what were your thoughts on that? Because I know you played a big role there, and you played
Hmm.
TGM 1 and 2 there.
Hmm. I guess I just have a lot of appreciation to QLEX for having the push to organize something, um, because it was one of those things where I think it seemed so different, you know, than the standard fare of what you would see at a GameStone Quick event at the time. It is unquestionably a speed game. It is a speed run oriented game. The leaderboards are organized by time attack, but I feel like um, that plays so much differently than I guess what you would consider, quote unquote traditional speedrunning games. It's not like a platformer. It's not like a racing game. It's not like something where you like move throughout an environment. It's something where you try to optimize a task. So I guess I just I'm grateful to QLX at the time for like bringing up the idea and submitting it. And when that kind of came along, the fact that he was asking, hey, who's interested in doing this, and getting together a team of people to like put together like that hour-long block of gameplay, which is also very different than anything Games Quick had really taken on at the time. But they were kind of into it. They're like, oh, if we can have this game, we know this is insane and we want to have it shown here, and we'll just let you like demonstrate stuff about your speed game in an hour-long block, like different aspects of it and the whole series. Yeah, that was amazing. I'm grateful for the Games Quick organization for I guess seeing that potential in it and letting us just go at it and just like submit a bunch of stuff and say, hey, we're going to do this and this and this and this, and we'll just show off the whole series and we'll talk about how it works, and we'll show off some side achievements, like I did the TGM3 secret grade once we set up TGM3 before segueing into the Master and Strasse segment. And yeah, I feel like it was the perfect encapsulation, I guess, of what was what we kind of prototyped with the Awesome Games replay demo. If you haven't seen it before, or haven't heard of it, the YouTube and like Twitch stream STG Weekly has kind of like I guess a side like a side show called Awesome Games Replay. It's like it's stuff that they have for like any other like arcade style games that aren't just scrolling shooting games. And yeah, so they had us on for that. You know, uh, Color Thief and Kevin and I flew down to Southern California and met up with Frenetic and Mike Hagar, and we just went and set up all the games and played them and got some nice runs out of it. I remember, one of the really exciting moments of it was that Color Thief was able to get TGM2 Death GM in one shot, like by the skin of his teeth. Really incredible moment. It was just like a great demo. Like everything came together really nicely. We were able to show off all of like the main aspects of the games that we were showing, and we were able to, I guess, repeat that performance in an like even more spectacular fashion on a bigger stage. You know, flying overseas, with QLEX coming in, from France, and like the chaos that happened behind the scenes too, with misplacing passports and rescheduling the TGM slot, and still being able to show it off in a spectacular fashion. Yeah, it went off splendidly, I'd say.
Would you consider the West Coast to be like a TGM hub?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm trying to think about it a little bit. So I would say that there were pockets of players. So we had, I guess, kind of the NorCal players and the, I guess, Seattle area players, and definitely, I guess, some Southern California contingent. So there was a lot of us, I guess, kind of oriented on that coast, but there's pockets everywhere, and I'm not necessarily sure that we were the hub per se, but we had players around, and there were certain concentrations, and we were able to, I guess, kind of line things up that way. And what with some of our other arcade friends, being down in Southern California, and wanting to do the event down there, host us up and let us play and show off the game, it made sense for us to kind of go down and make that happen.
You did mention SGDQ 2015. What were your what was it like, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an interesting event, because we were able to get some of the Japanese players on board. It was really starting to gain some momentum there. We had kind of some of the members that were on the AGDQ event, and then we had the new Japanese players flying over, and I'm also trying to remember. I do think that some of the players that had seen the AGDQ event, or like kind of gotten into the scene afterwards, as when we met them as well. It's kind of, you'll have to forgive me a little bit blurred together, since it's a number of years back, but I think it started to it showed, I guess, the influence of our of the winter event, in that we were able to bring back our most of our team from before. At least in terms of like players, we had everyone from there, and then we had, we also were able to bring Pucci along. We had the SQR and Khan come along, and also some couple new members, or like new like faces on our scene that we were like kind of connected with, able to come by for like the for the couch and so on. So it was a nice event too, and I think we were able to show some new or different things. SQR and I playing the two players, one controller, double play, and he was able to get a completion there. We were able to have Khan play some master mode and really like show at like a higher level, like the improved time attack that you could do there. I think unfortunately, we weren't able to get a GM account unlocked on the PCB that we had before demonstrating it, but he was behind the scenes really practicing in the practice room, trying to get a Grandmaster account so he could show the Grandmaster grade on the stage. Um, and despite not being able to do that on command, because it is quite hard to just go from 0 to GM in one day or a couple days. I think the performances that we had there were also a nice complement to what we had shown previously, and it was really great to be able to have an even more international presence when we came back.
All right, so I guess you talked about having some Japanese players come over to SJDQ. Have you yourself been to Japan before?
I have, yeah. I've been a few times. I guess in terms of like TGM related stuff, the most notable time I guess would be the first time that I went, which you'll have to forgive me and I'll have to look back at the timeline because I forget what year that was. I think that must have been around 2011 or 2013. The first time I visited Japan was when I went with a couple of friends from college. We were interested in traveling. They also had, I guess, kind of similar, I guess, gaming or I guess like Japan culture interests. So we wanted to go. We wanted to go to Akiba. We wanted to go play at arcades. We wanted to go buy games and merch and stuff that would be hard to get over here. I think one of our friends' plan was to go to a concert over there. So we just kind of talked about it. We're like, they wanted to travel with people, and we were like, okay, yeah. A couple of us were also interested in going over at the same time. I think another group of our I guess acquaintances or like mutual friends was also going over there for the concert at the time. So yeah, I decided I would be down for that, and I kind of planned to go over, and then on some of the days where we weren't hanging out together, to go and take the train over to Kodaira to go to Pier 21. And I was able to meet up with Needle and SQR and Gang No Ho Ho and yeah, a number of players over there. And Corian showed up, which was that was fun because what I was told was that Corian was probably not going to come to Kodaira that day because they thought that he'd be at Ebisen playing Blockout because he was pushing to break his record in that. And then later he made an appearance, and I just remember he, I was playing a game of TGM2 or something at the time, and I saw out of the corner of my eye, he showed his phone to SQR, and SQR just went, fuck! Because I suppose that Corian had not only beaten his own personal best in Blackout, but I think beaten SQR's record at Ebisen as well. Maybe even, the best at Ebisen at the time. So it was a fun moment to be able to hang out with all these players and to get to hang out and have ramen during the day and have Indian curry at night and just play a bunch of TGM, use the recording setup and play TGM1 and get my PB at the time and get on the leaderboard there. Talk to Ataro. It was a lot of fun. Ataro had he had a whitewater pinball translite on the door to the staff room, and so I talked to him briefly about that as well, and he said, oh yes, it was one of my best pinball. I don't know if that means top earner or favorite, but yeah, he was a known pinball fan and later did bring back some pinball machines to Pier 21 after my time. I wasn't able to go back and play while pinball was at Pier 21, but yeah, it was nice. I guess just getting to talk with everybody, meet everybody, watch top players play, and just I don't know, just nerd out, talk about games, and just spend that time. It was fun. I guess the other fun thing that I got to do that first trip was I got to meet up with Khan at Hey Arcade, and we put in some doubles attempts. Yeah, it was good getting to meet up again at that time because he'd come and visit America before, which was the I guess subject of a somewhat international TGM meet at the time, and so yeah, when I was able to go to Japan again, it was cool to meet up again with him, go meet up at Hey and play doubles and try to see what we could do, and also get to meet up a bit at Pier 21 when everyone was hanging out at that time. And yeah, it was nice. It was, it's tough when you don't get really to see people too much, when separated by continents and oceans, and don't get to talk too much. But yeah, so it's always great when I guess the Japan crew comes over for C2WC, and I guess whenever a lot of this stuff blows over, eventually, if I get a chance, I might want to go and give a shout to the Japan players as well. Yeah, I guess that's kind of that side of things.
And did you attend any other meetups as well, like outside of Japan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hosted a couple. I hosted a couple of the NorCal events. We basically would take over one of the meeting rooms at the university dorms, and just bring down CRTs and bring down PCBs and consoles and stuff and play. So I did host a couple of those that you can look up some information about on the forum and so on. And I also met up with some of the Seattle crew a couple times, like for SakuraCon, or when there was, like, let's say when I started going to Portland Retro Gaming Expo for NES Tetris, I also was able to attach some Seattle or like Portland area hangout around that time as well. So yeah, was able to, I guess, meet up with players on a number of occasions.
Right, and so I guess speaking of meeting up with players and playing TGM, the TGM4 location test that happened in 2015, you were there for that, am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how was that?
That was a lot of fun. That was really interesting, because people kind of came from all over. Like, it was also like, a little nerve-wracking leading up to the event, because I think just round one HQ didn't exactly communicate to the store that it was happening until it was happening. Like, I remember Mike Hagar and some of the other SoCal people were trying to call the round one store where it was supposed to be happening, and the staff there didn't really know. And I think it was just a matter of, it just didn't get communicated all the way down the line. So, like, we were a little bit worried, like, is this really happening? Are we, like, are we flying out? Are we driving down? Are we doing all this? And, like, are we just going to show up and then, like, throw up our hands and, like, have to do something else? But I think it was just, that's just sometimes how things are. Sometimes things are communicated to one group of people and not another. And then when it came down to it, a couple of Arika staff and, whichever representative from round one was helping them set that stuff up came over, and they were like, yep, hey, we're commandeering a cabinet. We got this, I think it was, some Sega candy cabinet, like a Versus or a Blast or something. And they were able to slot in a laptop, and they had pad hacked USB controllers, since the environment it was going to be released on still wasn't set at the time, and I guess, still isn't set at this time. They just brought a Windows Vista laptop. They had some stuff soldered up to USB controllers. They slotted that into a JAM harness, and off we went. It had CoinDrop enabled, and they would watch it for a while. They would take some camera footage while they were there. They would go off sometimes and come back later. And it was played continuously by somebody pretty much the entire time I was there, that whole weekend. People were just constantly dropping coins. If people had to go off for lunch, there were people staying there and playing, and it was really interesting. We also got to meet up with some other, I guess, SoCal Tetris people that aren't necessarily as affiliated with the like TGM side of things, that are like interested and maybe dabble but haven't played it as much, and so that was nice too. I got to meet Kiyobi down there. I got to meet Jaquan, who was a Hard Drop member, really active back then. I haven't really heard from him much since, but he was like, oh, there's going to be a bunch of Tetris players down here. I haven't hung out with Tetris players like ever, basically. So he walked his way down to the round one and met up with all of us, and it was a blast. And we ate at the food court, and hung out and just talked about TGM, and we sat at the cabs, and we had graph paper, and we're like mapping out Konoha solution stuff, and went to Hot Pot afterwards. God, what a blast! Just like getting to meet up with arcade people is always fun. Like, especially when it's around something that's like a location test like that, where you know how many location tests even really happen with a Japanese game. Like, we couldn't think of one that had happened for years. And the same, with like, I guess like there was probably similar energy around that with the XR Arcadia location tests that happened recently at, I think, the same round one. Um, you know, yeah, so we had, just a bunch of arcade people hanging out. We had, some other, shmup people. We had, uh, Frenetic and Soft Drink and Trap and, Godlike Scrub, just people from all over. Just, bunch of SoCal people driving down, people flying out. Um, it was just a blast to get a bunch of people together and play the game and talk with their Arcus staff and have them very bewildered at us. I think that we had like homebrewed Arika shirts and stuff, and new very obscure trivia about games or people that they're like, how do you even know that? we were the definition of like maniacs, but it was a lot of fun.
So, yeah, it seems like you really enjoyed it. I guess,
Hmm.
so I guess outside of the, I guess the community aspect, what did you think about the game itself compared to, I guess,
Hmm.
the 2009 prototype? Or
Yeah, so the 2015 prototype only really had two modes. It had Konoha, which is the big mode. You have the you know large sized pieces, and you try to go for perfect clears. And it had rounds, which is, I guess, the successor to like Death or Shiro Ase, which is like a 20G, you know decreasing lock delay, fast speeds, and some gimmicks. And that's all we really had accessible to us. And I guess we could notice some differences. I guess we had the Kanoha footage previously, and I think we noticed that the timer seemed faster in the 2015 version, so they were tweaking some gameplay balance stuff from previous tests. And we I guess noticed some changes to like button layout. The 2009 test mentioned something called the special button, which was you have in other TGM games, you have three rotation buttons. You have counterclockwise, clockwise, and a alternate counterclockwise that will help you do quick 180 inputs if you flick the two. And in TGM 4, there was the proposed special button, which would instead let you do things like if you were pressing the button, it would cause a delayed auto shift to activate instantly. So rather than have to hold the direction for a duration of time, if you knew you wanted the next piece to move quickly, you would just press that special button. And in this test, there was no special button, but there was actually a bug. Well, the control layout was supposed to be was a deviation from what we were used to with the classic rotation control scheme. It was supposed to be, instead of counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, it was supposed to be counterclockwise, clockwise, clockwise. And we think that is, well, we don't think that. We know that, and we've had additional confirmation since then from Ihara that the reason why the world rotation rule buttons are inverted from that, left, right, left to right, left, right control scheme is because of the guidelines saying that the rightmost button must be a right rotation. And the reason for that is on a controller, I will pick up a PlayStation controller. On a controller, the rightmost button is pretty conveniently accessed. You have your hand here, you have a left rotate, and you have a right rotate. So the rightmost button must be right rotate. But on an arcade control panel, your hand is like this. The dominant direction is the leftmost button, not the right. So it makes more sense to have left, right, left. But they had to make this rightmost button the right rotation button, so they compromised, and since they didn't have the special button in that test, these were both right rotate, except they weren't, because there was a bug. the rightmost button made the control scheme world rule. Like, if you were holding this button, this became right rotate and this became left rotate, and up became hard drop. It messed everything up. And it also meant that if you tried to flick CA or AC, it would not give you a well, I guess AC would not work. AC, you would get a left rotate, and then you would press C, and you would get a right rotate, and they would cancel. Or actually, no, sorry. I misspoken again. If you were trying to do what was the advised control scheme, which was that this is supposed to be a right rotate, so you try to flick CB, right rotate, and then right rotate again. Instead, you would get right rotate. This changes the control scheme. This is left rotate, and it would cancel. So no one was pressing C the entire location test because it was already messing us up, and we couldn't figure out why. And then when we found out why, we're like, oh god, this is just cursed. Like, there's a bug. We reported it. They said, oh, yes, there's a bug. And that was it. It was just, there was a useless button on the control panel, or like a dangerous button on the control panel. So that was the big difference from the 2009 test, is they tried to disable the function that button was going to be. They did it in a way that really just broke things in a way that they must have just been debugging things and testing things. And it still was that way when we had it at the test. So we just kind of avoided that button. You could, in theory, leverage it by giving yourself a hard drop, even though we're in classic rule and things like that, but we just didn't touch that button anymore. Which is inconvenient, because if you think about it, if you're playing rounds and it's very fast, lock delay was move reset, which is different than previous games, but still you have to press A twice or B twice in short lock delay, so it's a little bit dicey. It does reset when you rotate once, but it still leads to some kind of scary situations, I guess.
Right, so I guess in short, TGM4 was heavily unfinished.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's definitely still, work in progress software. There's just like little, we don't know what state it was finished in. We just know there was 2 modes when we got to play it. They weren't going to show whatever the state of master was, because probably whatever master was back in 2009 was like a placeholder. Kamui is still grayed out in the menu, so we don't know exactly what it is. So they really just showed us 2 modes that they were interested in doing some playtesting on. We don't know what changed in rounds, really, because we couldn't get as far as Mihara claimed there would be another gimmick. He said, oh, if you get to level 2600, there'll be another gimmick. But the game was so hard that, like, I think the best that anybody got in the weekend, I think, was probably Kevin got a 1700 or an 1800 or something. I think the quote-unquote world record with the Japanese test is a little bit further out, like 1900 or like 2000 or something like that. So we don't really know what other things might have been in there to test. We just know what we saw. And they would, of course, bug test more of the stuff, polish it, and, not just give us a debug build if it was going to be released. But what we played was fun. It was interesting. There was more to see, apparently. And I'd be interested in seeing it whenever it's around. But, yeah, hard to say. Without having played the 2009 test, and without knowing what other things that they're kind of, testing behind the scenes and not ready to show us, it's just, there's still the air of mystery around it.
Did you get Tap GM before NES Max?
Yeah, well before. I didn't even play NES before I played TGM2 and got GM. I guess that's kind of useful or interesting context. I guess it's just... as far as like the NES side of things, I think just the perception of the game at the time between like, I guess like the Tetris Concept Forum and like, Western TGM as it were, was that it was a tapping only game. And so I didn't really see it as something that I would be interested in playing. I think the big visibility of NES and Game Boy at the time was Spectre's videos, and he tapped. And then when Jonas uploaded, or I guess when Trey uploaded Jonas's level 19 max, and Jonas was helpful in the comments and describing how he played and answering questions and so on, it was around that time that I found out, oh, you can use delayed auto shift and play NES. And then I had to break down the mechanics, because it works I guess differently than any other Tetris game, kind of in the way that you keep momentum between pieces and so on. So yeah, definitely. Back at the time, I had TGM2 GM before I went and played at CTWC 2010. And before I kind of got interested in that scene. Yeah. Just trying to think. Yeah, but definitely. Well before that, in terms of the timeline.
All right, I guess moving on from the TGM for lock test and I guess the year 2015, I just want to talk about SGDQ 2016. What were your what was that like? What were your thoughts on it?
If I'm fuzzy on the early AGDQ and SGDQ and I participated, then I'm even fuzzier on the ones that I didn't participate in. But I do just remember it was nice to see in the similar spirits to how this year's AGDQ had a lot of new generation players. It was nice to see that people were able to kind of keep it going, because I think I was, I guess, uncertain about what we would do if we were going to submit it again. And I remember other members of the original team were also kind of uncertain what we would do if we were going to submit it again. Well, what kind of ended up happening was because there was a new wave of players, they were interested in bringing TGM1 back for a big race. And, Kevin was also, not sure what I think he was among the players that was like not really sure what we would do if we were going to bring it back ourselves. But because there was a demo, he's like, okay, sure, I will also submit some, TGM3 stuff in association with this. So like there were still people that were able to, I guess, come back and offer something for the later Games Done Quick. But I guess my perception or like recollection is just that the nice thing about those demos was that it was able to show, hey, you don't have to have been playing this for like eons. You can come and pick it up and play it, and there's a new wave of players, and we're glad to have new interest in the game, and there's a community that's trying to teach it and so on. Yeah, so I think it was just nice. It was showing the effect of the previous demos, that they were still able to have future ones with the new wave of players.
All right, so you could, I guess, say that HGDQ 2015 and SGDQ 2015 kind of helped form a new wave of players?
Right, so starting over, yeah, after the initial demos at AGDQ and SGDQ 2015, there were new members on the forums. There's more activity there, and there were new hardware owners because some players actually took it upon themselves to buy their own copies of the game, either to play at home or to try to convince to install at a local arcade or to bring to meets. Yeah, so I remember like one of the most striking cases was somebody who joined the forums and had bought TGM 1, 2, and 3 kind of all in one go. They were just so interested in the concept and sold right away from the GDQ demos that they bought all the games. And so not only do you have the effect of there's more activity in the forum, like there's more people that are interested in playing, there's more like of a Western scene that is like, I guess like another generation. But you also see that increase in interest and activity in terms of the price of the game going up. If you look at the graph of like auction prices and like PCB shop prices from around that time, it actually like spikes up like 2 to 3 times, which just goes to show like, not only are there more people interested in playing this game, there's more people interested in playing this game to the point where there's enough competition with the existing population of players and collectors and arcades that still have this game in circulation that the price actually has to increase to compensate. Yeah, so I think that's more evidence just that, even if there's emulation, even if there's clones, whatever you call them, clones, fan games, trainers, like people will go to bat for the game. And the only way to go to the bat for the game and to like support it or like support the market or ecosystem around it is to buy it secondhand as an arcade game. And it just goes to show the pressure that's put on that market by people that shouldn't have any business, I guess, buying a game that's supposed to be operated in a commercial space, that originally was priced for a commercial space, that, just by happenstance was able to come down in price in the second-hand market to the point where it was affordable. Well, now that is going back up because there's only so many of those games out in the wild. I mean, I think, we kind of had that estimated as like there's probably like 1,000 TGM1 boards, or, like 500 TGM2 boards, or, 250 TGM3 hard drives, or whatever the numbers are. That's never meant to support people buying it and playing it at home. It's supposed to support it going into an arcade and being, paid for by time, with people putting coins into the machine or paying at the door or whatever the case may be. And until we have a home version, we're going to continue to feel that pain point. So many people are interested in the game at this point that if they want to like legally own and operate the game in their own home, that they just have to bite the bullet and buy this expensive game.
I do want to talk about the I guess the quote unquote the elephant in the room when it comes to SGDQ 2017 for Tetris.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there were some issues with that.
Yeah, that's the year with the, I guess, lengthy setup, I guess we'll call it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think just that comes down to, I guess, some elements of, miscommunication and coordination, and also some unexpected technical issues, and, that all kind of coming to a head, and then not being sure how to like navigate that on the fly. I don't think it needs to be talked about a lot, although unfortunately from the viewer perspective, it's, I know, caused a lot of frustrations in how long it took. And really it could have been shortened by, if, it's just hard to think about that in the moment, but there were some other workarounds that could have been done. But I mean, the gist of it is just that GDQ made some changes to their setup that in theory would make it easier for us to bring arcade hardware or RGB modded consoles or other such things, but there was a slight non-standard way they were handling audio. Instead of taking it over the SCART connection, SCART is the European standard for a lot of video that might have I guess SCART is the standard plug on televisions for hooking up a variety of video sources, but for the purpose of arcade games, for hooking up RGB video sources. And rather than take the audio for the stream setup through the audio pins on the SCART plug, they had a separate breakout with RCA plugs, which are, the normal, I guess you would say, like white and red audio plugs that we'd see on a old CRT television otherwise. And because of that separate breakout, they couldn't take audio from the setup that was brought to GDQ. And that's really all it boils down to. And they could have gone without audio, or they, could have, taken the audio from, I think, Enchantress in Numbers, the super gun that they brought has a RCA audio out. But, like, it's one of those things when, like, something unexpected comes up and you're not sure how to fix it. Or like how to get it to like hook up the way you're expecting. There's miscommunication. One side was like, oh yes, everything's SCART now, so we brought stuff that only has a SCART hookup, and then oh no, the audio has to come through RCA. Oh well, how do we make this like work out? And just when it's a tense moment, heads aren't working right. That ends up not working out so great. And I think in the end they did realize, oh well, there's an RCA audio out on this Pana Custom, so okay, Eon, we're going to take your game audio. And then I think things got messed up again later because for whatever reason, the capture card or scaler that GDQ had for the computer video sources crashed when it got the 640 by 480 from the TGM3 output. And who knows why that blue screened their setup. Like that's one of those things. It's like you couldn't have predicted it. That this is now even more standard than before, but sometimes things just happen, and it's hard to debug them on the fly. But so it goes, and it's unfortunate that it caused such a, I guess, uproar in like some of the viewer community who was like, why did we wait 1 hour for this? But hiccups happen. Yep.
All right, so I guess kind of moving on from a bit of a tense topic to kind of lighten things a little bit, I do want to talk about I guess some of your own personal records and something that I think is interesting. So in 2019, you released your World and Classic GM for TGM3. Is that correct?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
your World GM you did in 2018, so you kind of hid it from the world and for like a year.
Hmm.
I guess what kind of motivated you to do that?
Right. So the plan behind all of that was that this was back when Kevin and Zach were still working on their documentary, and they kind of had this plan that like, oh, we can do kind of like a unhoard of records like as part of the documentary, or like as like a topic of the documentary. And I think that was motivated just I guess by the like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark side of the speedrunning scene, where they would have these unhoards where like a bunch of people would participate in a project and they would unhoard a bunch of videos at once and set it to music or do something of that sort, make it kind of of production where it's like it's an exciting day, like oh man, like there's a bunch of new tech, there's a bunch of new stuff that happened, or whatever the case may be. um, or even just people getting some really hot personal bests. So yeah, I had those hoarded from back then, and then that project kind of fell by the wayside for one reason or another. And so they kind of said, yeah, okay, well, you can release this stuff whenever you guys want to. We don't want to hold up your records going out anymore. Um, and I guess just that process just took a long time to navigate. Um, just it was really uncertain for a while what would be happening with the documentary project. So I was trying to respect that I had offered that the videos would be part of that, or at least to the classic GM video. And then when it came around to the time when they kind of were thinking they were not going to be able to release it in the form that they had originally planned, then I kind of looked at it and I was like, well, okay, what can I do with this now? It's been a long time. It feels kind of weird just releasing it on its own. So I just kind of rolled with it. I just decided, okay, well, let me see what else I can put together for it. I'll make my own project and just, you know, it felt so weird having not talked about it to the world for so long that I just figured, oh, I'll just figure out a way to make my own project out of it. I'll kind of do the unhoard, as it were, just as an unhoard, and instead of part of it as a documentary, and I'll put together some other interesting stuff and see what comes out of it. And then one day decided, okay, I think I've brought this to the like extent that I can. There were a few other things that I was trying to work on for it, like for example, like a Shirase clear or a TGM1 secret GM as well. But some of these things, it's like there's only so far you can push it. Like you have to have an endpoint, you have to have a deadline. So one day I just kind of arbitrarily decided, okay, well, it's going to be today or tomorrow or whatever. I'm just going to say I'm going to announce something. Hey, there's something cool I'm going to show off, and probably could have marketed it better than that, but I still got a decent handful of people from the community in the chat and watching as I released it for the first time, and then a day later after the quote unquote affiliate 24-hour period of exclusivity with Twitch was over, I released the unedited non copyright claimable music versions of those clips onto YouTube. So yeah, it was just a matter of I had withheld it for another member of the community's project. That project fell through. It had been so long since it happened that I decided to try to make something more of it rather than just like, oh yeah, sorry, I secretly held this off from you guys for a while, and I just tried to see what other achievements I could put together to make it feel like something more concrete. And then when I was happy with it, or like felt like I shouldn't push too much further, I released it.
All right, so speaking of GMs and what Escatre put in voice chat
Mm-hmm.
text, I just want to ask, coming from someone who has been grinding secret grade GM for like the past 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
how have you done it? Like, cause you've done TGM1,
Mm-hmm.
you've done TGM1 Tap, Classic GM, World GM, and then even NES Secret GM. Like, what's your secret?
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Yeah. Have I done World GM? I don't think I actually have done World GM. The analogy that I use is like, maybe it's another, I guess, niche analogy. It's another speedrunning oriented one, but I look at it like I look at, I guess, the in the Mario Kart community. Like if you've ever watched the Summoning Salt video about the history of world records on Choco Mountain, there's an absurd exploit on that track that allows you to get really short track times that wouldn't normally be possible. You're able to, I guess, fool the way it tracks your progress around the track, and basically jump at a wall 3 times. And if you hit very precise points on that wall, you're able to set instant laps. The game just thinks you've gone all the way around the track, even though you've just jumped at the wall in the same position once. And if you're able to get that 3 times in a row, then you can get this absurdly fast world record time using shortcuts on that track. And if you watch that, I think it's Abney who just grinded at that, and it was just he would just track how many times he was able to get this in a row and like what his percent hit rate was on it. The person that came up with the trick was Weather Tenko. So, he's just like, okay, I have this chart on my stream layout. This is how many Weather Tenkos I've been able to get. This is my hit rate. And it's just like a matter of stats. It's like, when you can't track your improvement anymore in terms of, discrete improvements, like, normally when you're starting with secret grade, it's like, okay, I got one more row than I did previously. I got, S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, S6, S7, S8, and then you start to hit a wall. And, maybe you even start to get S9s. You're one row away from completing this thing. But the space is so tight at the top that instead of saying like, oh, my personal best is improved, you almost have to think about it in terms of my percentage likelihood of being able to improve my personal best has gone up. You get to a point where the achievement is so difficult and the odds are so low that instead you're like, okay, well, I was able to get S9 this many times this session. That's an improvement. Or I was able to get one piece away, or I was able to get one cell fill away from completing the pattern this many times this session. And you just keep on tracking what improvements you have in terms of really small incremental gains. It's like your odds have improved, but your record hasn't. But you have to have some other metric of thinking about the problem to figure out how to improve it. And that was kind of the mindset that I had going towards it. So I would say that TGM3, without getting too technical about it, I was able to get that. And TGM2 also, thankfully, I was able to just, get some S9s and then eventually get, a GM failure where I rotated a piece one too many times and got really upset about that. And then the next day just grinded it for another hour and was able to get that off stream. Those both, I guess, due to the kindness of the randomizer in TGM2, it was within a realm of possibility where I didn't have to think or change my mindset about how I did it. But when I got to TGM1, it just felt like throwing myself against a brick wall. And so that mindset change was just in terms of well, I'm improving. It's not as visible improvement. It's not as discrete improvement, but I can see that I'm improving. My odds are going up. So I'll just have to keep doing this and trying to, play as conservative, or I guess play as efficient as possible to make it clean enough at the top, or to have an out where I might have a solution. And it's not my fault if that solution doesn't come to pass. It's just I built for the solution that was most likely. And if I don't get the pieces, that's not my fault. And I think that's also, I guess, similar to the mindset that you probably have to have for something like poker or mahjong or any game of chance. It's I did the correct thing. I did the thing that was statistically most likely to work. And just because it didn't, just because the expected value was this and it didn't work, doesn't mean I did the wrong thing. I executed the strategy that I think was most likely to give me the value that I needed. And I just kept going at it until it worked.
TGM1 Secret Dream is really that much harder than Tap from Miss Quatre?
Yeah, because it's not like I hadn't tried back then. And it's not like I hadn't tried repeatedly to get it for the Unhorde. And it's not like I hadn't tried repeatedly to get it for J. Brom's challenge to get a TGM1 GM, because there was a challenge on the Absolute Plus where everyone was trying to get their best TGM1 GM attempt, and I think just because of the randomizer, yeah, it really just is that more difficult to do, and I haven't really like tried to do like a statistical analysis, but just anecdotally, I was able to on 2 consecutive days, years and years ago, back in 2015, I guess, maybe 2016, 2 consecutive days, I was able to get a you know uh, choked TGM2 GM and then an actual completion, with maybe like an hour and a half difference in game time. And then in TGM1, even though I felt like I was, playing as clean as that, it just wouldn't yield for months of actual concerted effort.
All right. So, we're getting close to wrapping this up. I do want to talk about, I guess, the modern wave of players, and I guess, what are your thoughts on them? What do you think is different compared to your wave and maybe the waves before and like post GDQ?
Mm-hmm. Um, I have to say that like maybe it's partially just because of like the way that I operate as a little like internet gremlin or cryptid who doesn't always interact very directly with the way things are going. I can't say like I've noticed like as massive of a paradigm shift in the TGM community as I maybe have seen in other communities, like particularly the NES community, like especially the trend toward younger players, the trend toward different play styles. Um, and in the TGM community, I feel like I just haven't been as tapped in, maybe, so I can't speak to it as strongly. But I feel like you know we have um, we have more activity. Like we've migrated from maybe a smaller community on the forums and IRC, and into Discord, and we have new players that have seen it at previous AGDQ demos and found it through other ways. But I don't know necessarily because I'm not tapped in super strongly. I don't watch a lot of Twitch streams right now, and I see people's records, scroll by on the Discord feed, but I don't necessarily always have time to watch every single one. I don't guess know how the playstyles and things have changed. I don't know how people's practice approaches have changed. I know that we have some outstanding records being set, especially like I see a lot of the screenshots and clips from SPC, and those really have impressed upon everyone, including the Japanese scene. It really goes to show when like Kashiwa is starting to like take notice. That's some of their world record holders are seeing and like noticing some of those gains. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like maybe a little bit like a community graybeard in like some ways. I know there are older community members like that came before me, but I feel like maybe like I'm not as tapped into what's happening right now, so it's hard for me to speak on with like a lot of precision.
Right, and I guess one way you could kind of look at it is the huge amount of sorry, not tap, TI GMs we've had recently. Like I believe we've had.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, because I know you were there for Eric's classic GM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Yoshi's, I think, and now that there we've got quite a few world GMs and quite a few classic GMs. You know there's like a kind of like a little cable or like little sub community of GM players that have picked up the game more recently. There's like a little Discord of people that are going for GM or have achieved GM, kind of off on the side of what you would call your like mainline the Absolute Plus Discord. Yeah, so like there are definitely pockets of players that have I guess picked up the game and increased to that number, and I wonder how much that's going to change, because I know there's players that I guess aren't as active in our main community that do play TGM from time to time. Like for example, like there's NES players that play it. Some of them have joined this Discord, some of them haven't. I wonder how much that's going to change when there's a actual, hopefully, like again, like I'm saying it as if it's going to happen, but I'm saying, I guess rather to rephrase it, I wonder how much that would change if there were a commercially available home version of the game. If we open that up to more people, how many more people would be able to get TGM 3GM? It's been a surprisingly resilient game toward new players getting GM. That number hasn't been as explosive as the number of, like, for example, NES max outs was after NES picked up as much as it did. But I have to wonder what'll happen if our community continues to grow.
Right, and I guess kind of looking towards the future, where do you think the TGM series in general is heading?
Well, I think it's highly contingent on the plan that Mihara has set in place coming into place. If we describe it as the TGM series being the actual game produced and developed by Arika, and not I guess offshoots are fan interpretations, fan Tetramino games that kind of inherit some of their game philosophy from similar things. The future of TGM seems contingent on there being a home version that is able to be released and the success of that home version. And then I guess that's, has immediate effects in terms of, the community has an opportunity to grow. There might be more people able to play it that weren't before, or we're reluctant to really rely on outside sources like emulation or fan games to participate with it as much. Also, as an advertisement in and of itself, if it's on storefronts, on Nintendo Switch eShop or Steam or so on. So I guess there's the community growth aspect. The future, in terms of community growth, there's more ground for it to grow, I guess, if there's a version that more people can play more readily and more accessibly. And then I guess it's just a matter of if it performs well enough for there to be a sequel. In the sort of anti-announcement when Mihara was saying, "Oh, it's the Arika 35th. We have stuff to announce about these other games. We have something we want to announce about TGM, but we can't yet. But there is a home version, maybe. We can't announce the details. If it does well, there might be a sequel." Yeah, if we're able to actually see TGM4 released, I guess there's a new frontier of challenge to kind of tackle. But I just feel like it's one of those things where maybe the development of future games or home versions or whatever, that's always been in a standstill or in a like questionable state, and that doesn't really impact the health of our community. We still have us, and we still have the games that were released, and we'll still be able to continue enjoying them for the future to come. It would just be nice if there was more access available, and if there was more ability for a sequel to be produced, and to see what else could be done, like what other challenges and other puzzles that Mihara has in store for us, I guess.
Right, so I guess it's kind of basically, we don't really know, in short.
Yeah, it's just it's a cozy feeling. We've got what we have, and you can't put it back in the box, right? And we've got the games that exist. It's the same way that you can go back and play NES Tetris on a CRT. We can play the arcade games that are there, and we just have to see what the future brings.
Yeah, and so I guess before we wrap up the interview, is there anything you want to just say or mention at all? Or just kind of shout out?
I don't think off the top of my head. I just, I guess, I don't know. TGM is something great, right? It's great that we were able to still, come together and play this game, stretching back as far as 1998, and if you want to delve back into its history, with like Sega Tetris and so on, stretching back as far as 1988, it's always going to be an enduring puzzle, and I'm glad that we still have people that are willing to hang out and talk about it, and yeah, it'll always be a cozy community to come back to, and I'm glad that more people are able to pick it up and come back every now and again.
All right. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to letting me interview you. So,
Hmm.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.